He knew the world would not be the same. Few people laughed. Few people cried. Most people were silent. I remembered the line from the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita. Vishnu is trying to persuade the prince that he should do his duty, and to impress him takes on his multi-armed form and says, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." I suppose we all thought that one way or another.
Hello again, everyone! Today I will be doing a video that I've actually been meaning to do for a while now. Today I will focus on an organization of evildoers that have plagued the X-Men since the 70s. I'm of course referring to the Illuminati-esque group known as the Hellfire Club. The Hellfire Club were introduced in Uncanny X-Men number 129 in 1980, and were one of several memorable elements introduced during the legendary run on the X-Men by writer Chris Claremont. Chris Claremont and artist John Byrne were actually inspired to make the Hellfire Club after an episode of the 60s TV show The Avengers. No, not those Avengers. The Avengers was a British TV show about an organization of spies. It was kind of made to cash in on the insane popularity of the James Bond franchise, but it ended up becoming very popular and unique on its own. The specific episode of the show that gave way to the Hellfire Club of the X-Men universe was titled A Touch of Brimstone, where a couple of the main characters infiltrate a stylized secret society group named the Hellfire Club, after the very popular lavish and decadent groups and parties that happened in Britain and Ireland during the 18th century, and were practiced usually by members of high society. The Hellfire Club in this episode deliberately dressed in fashionable 18th century British formal clothes, much like the characters who I will be talking about now. So that is enough of the history, let's talk characters. The Hellfire Club was a social event invented by the rich social elite that sprang into popularity in the UK during the 1700s. However, unlike in real life, a handful of the highest-ranking members actually traveled to the American colonies to spread its influences. But oh no, it didn't just stop at America. Throughout the centuries, Hellfire Club members traveled all over the world. The club had established branches in places such as Boston, Hong Kong, Paris, New York, and LA. All the various branches of the club are monitored by a single individual known as the Lord Imperial. However, a secret branch known only as the Inner Circle was formed by a guy named Edward Buckman, or the White King, as he's called, right under the nose of the then Lord Imperial Sir Gordon Phillips. Usually a person is born into the Hellfire Club, and most of the members inherit titles that are passed down from their ancestors. However, if one had the wealth and conviction, they too could become a member themselves, even though they had no hereditary members that were already in the club. The members of the club named themselves after a chess piece like everyone else. The main motivation of the Hellfire Club is, well, obviously, power. Not just any type of power. The power to buy governments and influence world events to their liking, the power to cripple or save economies, the power to murder anyone who poses a threat to their plans, the power to start or end wars. You get the idea. They intend to use their wealth and influence to basically control the world from the shadows. Delving into their exploits and more interesting stories, a mutant by the name of Sebastian Shaw had joined the inner circle of the club, having assumed the role of Black Bishop. Shaw had become very popular within the inner circle which didn't sit well with Buckman as he perceived Shaw as a threat to his position. So Buckman used his vast influence to order an assassination attempt on Shaw by a group of Sentinels. Shaw, being quite a tough cookie, survived the attack. But unfortunately, his girlfriend at the time, a mutant by the name of Lourdes Chantel, not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, was killed in the attack. After this incident, Shaw would team up with another member of the Inner Circle, Emma Frost, and murder every other member of the Inner Circle, with Shaw assuming the role of Black King and Frost becoming White Queen. After this coup d'etat by Shaw and Frost, they, along with a few new members of the Inner Circle, had shifted their focus towards the X-Men, more specifically, the member known as Jean Grey. The reason why Shaw had become so interested in Jean was because he believed her to be the reincarnation of one of the oldest members of the club, Lady Grey. So upon capturing the X-Men, Shaw had ordered the mutant known as Mastermind, whom I had previously talked about, to brainwash Jean and make her into the Black Queen of the club. Obviously that didn't work so well. And of course the Dark Phoenix was created. Failing to turn Jean Grey over to their side and inadvertently creating the most destructive and dangerous creature the universe has ever seen, did little to deter the Hellfire Club from continuing on with their nefarious plans. Sebastian Shaw demonstrated how much of a scumbag he really was by making an arrangement with Senator Robert Kelly to commission a government project named Project Wide Awake to construct a new batch of Sentinels and profit off the bias and hatred towards the mutants, even though he himself was a mutant. Meanwhile, the White Queen herself, Emma Frost, became headmistress of a school called the Massachusetts Academy, which was basically a strict, highly decadent boarding school for mutants that became something of a competitor for Professor X's own school for mutants. Another similarity between Frost's school and Xavier's was that the Massachusetts Academy was also a front for the training of a highly skilled team of mutant fighters. This team was known as the Hellions. The Inner Circle of the Hellfire Club oversaw the recruitment and training of new Hellion members and constantly pit them against Xavier's other team of mutant superheroes, the New Mutants. Most of the official history of the Hellfire Club from this point forward is really nothing but constant betrayals and shifts in the leadership and politics of the group, which was basically the status quo anyways when it came to the Hellfire Club. So there's nothing really significant to discuss. So now, I will be briefly explaining the backstories of a few of the major characters in this organization. The first of these characters I will touch upon is, of course, Sebastian Shaw. Now, going back to real-life movies, John Byrne, who originally designed Shaw, actually based his look and name on the real-life actor Robert Shaw, whom some of you may remember as the assassin Red Grant in the iconic Bond movie From Russia with Love, and more famously as the grizzled shark hunter Quint from Jaws. Anyways, Sebastian Shaw's mutant power is that he has the ability to absorb energy of any kind and use it to make himself stronger or faster. Any hostile force that you can think of, such as blunt objects, bullets, punches, and laser beams, would do nothing to Shaw except allow him to use these energies against whatever person or thing originally used them. However, Shaw has a limit to how much abuse he can actually take. He can take a lot, but too much and he can be knocked unconscious. Even when you don't think of his powers, Shaw is insanely strong and fast, and constantly works to increase the threshold of how much energy his mutant powers can contain. Shaw is a very suave and cunning individual who often uses political contacts of his to make the lives of the X-Men very difficult. The next character to talk about is, of course, Emma Frost. Nowadays, she isn't exactly a villain, But there is no changing the fact that she was one of the most important club members, and thus I will be talking about her here. Emma Frost was born to a wealthy family, but had a pretty rough life before joining the Inner Circle. After becoming headmistress of the Massachusetts Academy, she had many different skirmishes with the X-Men. But then later, she befriended a few of their members and kind of came to respect them. Frost's sister, Adrienne, had planned to bomb the school, and so Frost had decided to kill her before that happened. Unfortunately, when her students learned of this, they began to dislike and distrust her, thus forcing her to relocate to the mutant island of Genosha. Sadly, a devastating sentinel attack would destroy a huge amount of the population on the island, and so Frost would later be rescued and would be offered a job as a teacher at Xavier's school. And that is how she would become a member of the X-Men. Frost is one of the most powerful telepaths in mutant history. Not just because she can do all kinds of neat shit like mind reading, astral projections, mind control, mental communications that can reach across kilometers, and of course shielding, but her most unique mental ability is that she can actually enhance the powers of another mutant by penetrating their mental barriers and breathing new energy through the neurological parts of their brain. She can also activate powers dormant in mutants that have not even manifested yet. So you can imagine that when she was an enemy of the X-Men, she was not one to be underestimated. The next character is Selene, who I won't actually be talking about here, but in another video because her backstory is vast and goes well beyond the Hellfire Club. Then there's Mastermind, who I have already talked about. So that leaves Donald Pierce, the last character I will be talking about. Pierce was named after actor Donald Sutherland, and the surname of the character was taken from Hawkeye Pierce, a character from the TV show MASH whom Sutherland had played in the TV movie of MASH. But anyways, Donald Pierce is a cyborg and also was once the White Bishop of the Hellfire Club's Inner Circle. Despite his position, Pierce hated mutants, and was more than aware of the fact that every other member of the Inner Circle was, in fact, a mutant. Pierce had hatched a plan to murder all the members of the Inner Circle that involved Professor X and another mutant by the name of Sage, who is a double agent for the X-Men working within the Hellfire Club. This plan backfires, and Sage manages to expose Pierce's plan to the other members, and thus he is ostracized from the group. After his banishment, though, Donald Pierce teams up with Lady Deathstrike and forms the mercenary organization known as the Reavers. And I will not go into the rest of his history as it really has no further relevance to the Hellfire Club. I don't want to get off topic. Ability-wise, Donald Pierce is one tough SOB. He has all the classic abilities, super strength, speed, agility, and reflexes courtesy of his robotic body. He's also pretty damn smart. He is a computer and robotics expert who constantly tries to upgrade his own body, at the cost of pretty much all the organic matter. Except his head, though. So he is a pretty badass villain for the X-Men to battle. And, well folks, that's all I have to say about these characters. I have finally completed this video. It was longer than I had intended it to be, but I certainly hope that helps making it worth the long wait. I will continue to produce these videos to the best of my ability. If I don't have any other things going on, goodbye.